As irrational as Angela Rye is, she may have actually gotten something right for a change. Hello, good people. It is Todd Shannon, data scientist, social commentator, getter of buckets. And today we're going to listen to this conversation that Angela Rye and Andrew Gilliam are having. Maybe a testy, spirited conversation here where Angela Rye says, you know what? Why are we just peacefully handing over democracy to a fascist? It's a fair question. It's a fair question. I think what we have learned from this recent, resounding victory from the Trump campaign, shout out to Team MAGA, what I call the common sense coalition. But one thing that the progressives and the hardcore leftists can't seem to get through their mind is, how is it that this guy who's such a danger to democracy, how has he risen to power once again? And should we be cooperating? It's a fair question. And they haven't seemed to put two and two together that maybe that their hyperventilating and their exaggeration of the so-called threat that Donald Trump poses, maybe that threat was thoroughly declared to be a bunch of garbage and a bunch of wolf tickets when the American people, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, provided not only a resounding victory as from the electoral college standpoint, but from the standpoint of the popular vote. That almost never happens for GOP candidates just because of how the population centers are almost always Democratic and blue in their orientation. But that doesn't seem to register with them. They seem to still be in this kind of diluted sense of Donald Trump is a fascist. He's literally Hitler. So let's look at this conversation. I find it pretty fascinating. And I think there's a lot to be learned from this conversation. So let's get right into it.
They say that an incumbent president has 3 responsibilities. 1 is the law, 2 is precedent, and 3 is goodwill. But I want to know how far goodwill should go. Should he be meeting with Donald Trump in the Oval Office for a peaceful transition of power? Is that a way to neutralize some of what is to come? I actually don't like it, y'all. Maybe I'm just out here. Maybe I'm, Andrew, I know you're the resident diplomat among us and you may see it differently, but it actually really grinds my gears that this is something that we doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on. I really believe this man is a fascist and a racist and a bigot and he's a xenophobic person and he, all of those things. And not to just label him, but these are the things that we say based on the words that have come out of his mouth. So why is there the pageantry in the Oval?
2 quick things. One, I think Joe Biden, having wrested so much of his rebirth in his run for presidency, and even Kamala through the prosecuting of the case around why Donald Trump is unfit to serve in the office again, they were rightly trying to ring the alarm, sound the alarm, treat him as not normal, as a pariah in many ways. But once the people have spoken, once voters have decided, and in this way, in a relatively convincing way in modern politics, given the spread, it is incumbent upon the existing leadership to, in my opinion, hold with its traditions and its norms. And quite frankly, it's been done. Hillary Clinton sat there as the opponent of Donald Trump, but as a former first lady and wife to President Bill Clinton, in hair distance to Donald Trump as he took the oath of office. I can't imagine what this woman wanted to do: snatch his hair, hers, and everybody else's.
Well, his answer is a little bit long-winded, but I think the main point that he's making, I think, is pretty clear. He's saying, hey, listen, they were right to sound the alarm. Donald Trump is this, he's that, he's a danger, blah, blah, blah. But once he won, and then it's time for us to move on. Okay? That's his general kind of take on everything. Now, the problem with this is that, as I mentioned before, they haven't really taken inventory of the fact that have you ever seen that meme? It's a Simpsons meme where there's this guy. He's like, am I out of touch? He's like, no, the people are, whatever. I can't remember the exact thing, but like, this is something that these people tend to not be capable of doing. They seem to be incapable of self-reflection. They seem to be incapable of saying, wait a second, did we go a little bit, overboard with the whole Hitler fascist thing? Because I'll say this, Angela Rye, I think her thinking about this is more consistent with what they've been saying, right? It's like, why are we facilitating a transfer of power to this guy who actually is a danger? I think her thinking is more consistent, but I think it actually isn't consistent enough. If Donald Trump is who he says he is, then everything that they've done to him, including the attempt on his life, is warranted. But you see, this is the problem. It is only to a person who's completely deluded themselves that they think that Donald Trump, after having already served 4 years in the Oval Office, everyone's lives were objectively better. Economically, there was no wars. And all of the crazy stuff that they swore up and down Donald Trump was going to do, he did not do. But they still keep insisting that Donald Trump is this existential threat. And now they're saying, oh, if he gets back in the office, he's never going to, it never ceases to amaze me how they talk about how Donald Trump tried to overthrow the government. And then on January 20th, during the inauguration, he just left. Okay, like if he was going to, I don't know if they know this, but the president of the United States is commander-in-chief of the armed forces. If he had no intention of leaving the presidency, then he could have just ordered his generals and other people to arrest his political opponents, to put them in prison. That's what they do in other third world countries or in other banana republics where they don't have the rule of law and they're being ruled by some tyrant dictator. That's what he does. He just says, game over. He just knocks the chess pieces over and says, I win. That's not what he did at all. And they refuse to acknowledge the fact. And this is why they were so thoroughly defeated. They can't acknowledge that simple fact, is that they have an alternate reality in their minds that they live in. But once again, I think Andrew Gilliam actually makes a good point. And by the way, Andrew Gilliam, if that name sounds familiar, he was the former gubernatorial candidate that ran against Ron DeSantis in his first term. So Ron DeSantis' first term, he defeated Andrew Gilliam, and obviously we dodged a huge bullet because Ron DeSantis only narrowly defeated him. His second term, it was a complete rout, but the first one was actually pretty close. Subsequent to that race, Andrew Gilliam, who's supposed to be married to a woman, supposed to be a family man, was later found having an orgy with 2 other men. He was so inebriated he couldn't actually respond to anything. The other guy had overdosed on some pills. They recovered some meth. So apparently they were drinking and doing meth and having a gay orgy. And that guy was almost the governor of Florida. So I just wanted to point that out for your consideration. But let's go back to this, because this is where the conversation gets really, really, really contentious here. So let me see if I can go back a little bit here.
The things that we know and have relied upon for government support and programming will be no more. And we throw all of that out the window so that Joe Biden can skin and grin in a meeting with this man who is mugging the camera. He's still in character.
But do you think Joe Biden
I'm not
wants
talking
to have
about
to sit
what he
there?
wanted to do. I'm talking about what he did.
But what he did,
It ain't about what he wanted to do. It's about what he
did was demonstrate not Joe Biden's personal will toward Donald Trump, but the will and the graciousness and the magnanimity of the office of president. And just because one derelict, Donald Trump, has no respect for democracies and our norms, doesn't mean that we are then equal by abandoning them right along with them.
I think
Andrew,
that
the
if he
campaign
took
had
an
been
oath,
for.
I would like for us to pull up the presidential oath.
Well,
Because I think that it's actually a violation of the presidential oath to sit down and meet with this man.
Wow, she's saying it's a violation of the oath of the president. Interesting.
I
well,
do.
that
That's what I really
I
believe.
think that's an opinion, but I think
It
Andrew
is my
from
opinion. I said I think.
yeah, Angela, I hear you. Number one.
Okay, cool.
I
said
but I'm
it's
just
my
saying, it's no
opinion.
need to shout. I hear you, and
I
nobody is
understand
attacking
that
you.
I understand. I don't feel attacked, and I'm not attacking any
I
of
think
y'all.
it's
My
charged,
volume is my
guys.
passion.
I
Okay, I
think
just
this
want
is
us all to
It's
charged.
have
not
like a
directed at
mature
you.
exchange
I
of
am
everything.
mature,
Because right
and I am
now,
also passionate. It's
okay,
mature passion.
well, okay.
I have siphoned off on occasion. Angela, you siphoned off on occasion. Tiffany, you will siphon off on an occasion because this is a highly charged moment. And
Yeah,
I
it's
understand
fine.
that all of us
normal.
have strong opinions about how we feel
I just want
about
us to
this
be
thing.
respectful to each other's point.
Agreed,
Andrew, I hear your
agreed,
point. Angela, I hear
agreed.
your point. I have
And I
something
back
to
off. It's you,
I
please.
have something to say about both. Andrew, when you're talking about the pageantry of it, I do appreciate your perspective in maturity, because that is not something that we saw in Donald Trump. You know, I mean, it was given.
Well, first of all, there's nothing for him to be mad about. Everyone acts like let me just bring it in close here, because this is the fundamental disconnect with those who are Trump deranged and those who understand what happened in 2020. In 2020, they had 51 intelligence agents say that the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation. They stopped people from sharing the story. They kicked him off. They kicked Donald Trump, a sitting president, off of Twitter when literal Islamic terrorists still had their Twitter account. They allowed for all kinds of weird and proven to be rife and subject to fraud, all kinds of voting rules that they changed at the last moment, some of them in direct contravention of the state legislature. They put their thumb on the scale in every conceivable way. In Atlanta, in Georgia, where he barely lost, he lost by, I think it was like maybe 11,000 votes, 10,000 votes. I don't remember the exact count. Maybe it was fewer than that. They said that they stopped counting in the middle of the night because a pipe had burst. That was the reporting on that night. They said a pipe burst. Come to find out, a pipe had not burst. So they reported that falsely. And then they said, we're going to pause counting votes for the night because of this emergency. And they sent the poll watchers home. And then after they sent the poll watchers home, they resumed counting. That's like one of like dozens of stories. And they don't understand why Donald Trump, this is the thing. You can say all kinds of nonsense about how there was no widespread, this is the bullcrap talking point of every nut job, far left Trump deranged person. There was no widespread evidence, right? It's just like, well, basically, since you couldn't prove that we cheated, there's no reason for you to be upset. I mean, by that logic, I guess Nicole Brown Simpson's father and her family shouldn't have had any reason to get upset because, the jury acquitted OJ. There's no reason for them to suspect that he did it. It's pure stupidity, and everyone knows it. Sometimes our justice system doesn't always get it right. And they always want to say that it works when it works in their favor and it's broken when it doesn't. So I could rattle off like 1,000 different examples of why 2020 in that election was rife with all kinds of weirdo stuff that happened, which is the reason why Donald Trump was salty about losing, because he felt like he was cheated. And, interestingly enough, Joe Biden supposedly got 81 million votes, the most ever in the history of the United States. And how many did Kamala get? 67. They lost 14 million votes in the span of 4 years. Donald Trump actually got basically the same amount of votes in the last election that he got in this one. And this time it was a blowout. And last time he lost by 4 million votes. This is where the Trump derangement stops you from seeing the facts. But I do want to say, Angela Rye, I think, though, I just want to say this. She's right. She is right if, in fact, all of the rhetoric that the Democrats have been spewing about Donald Trump, if it's true. And I think the American people, thankfully, they basically said, we can see that you're full of garbage, that you're full of it. We know that you're lying. We don't believe you. Let's get this guy back in the White House so that we can get our grocery bill down. So that's the situation. The Common Sense Coalition prevailed, and the Common Sense Coalition, well, I think will continue to prevail, but Trump derangement, I think we still have a long way to go before we eradicate it from our society, but I'm interested to know what your thoughts are. Leave a comment in the comment section. If this is your first time coming to the channel, I appreciate you watching. Thank you, and God bless you.